Hello everyone. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. I never begrudged the opportunity to go back into the woods for the weekend. There was an enchantment that hung over the peacefulness of the trees, the pinging mountain air, and the prettiness of solitude. When my buddy Jason asked me if I would come along with him on a communal remote cabin out in the middle of the woods on an overnight excursion, I didn't flinch. We had also extended an invitation to friends Mark and Sarah to accompany us, hoping this would be just the right moment to withdraw from the world and unwind. The ride to the cabin had been less stressful than I'd anticipated. When we'd exited the interstate and deeper into the woods, the roads decreased in size and the road was dusty. Trees drew closer, branches above casting dark, overarching shadows in the sunlight. We'd arrived at the cabin before the sun still lingered above the trees, shining through its final burst. The cabin itself was rural comfort. It was one story with a tiny kitchen and living area and a fieldstone fireplace. We'd been assured by the owner that there was electricity and running water, but our cell phone signal on our phones was zero. Not that we minded. It was what we were going to do anyway. And as we were getting comfortable and clearing the room, Sarah commented on this odd thing to say. There were a number of locks on the front door, more than you normally have. Deadbolts, chain, and even a bit of wood to stuff into it to jam it closed. Jason dismissed this as some neurotic owner's idiosyncrasy. We ate, and we drank, and slept afterwards. Jason and Mark slept in the room on the left, and I slept in the room on the right with Sarah. It was appallingly, silently quiet, the kind of quiet which makes every little noise all the more dramatic. The wind sweeping through the branches, the wood creaking at times. It all had to be amplified by the silence. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I awoke to the gentle scratching. At first I thought it was an animal at the door, but when I sat up and listened carefully, the scratching was deliberate. Gentle, persistent scratching on the front door. Raced hard in my chest. I glanced over at Sarah, who slept. I did not wake her, but entered into the living room. The fire had burned down to coals glows in the fireplace and cast rhythmic shadows across the walls. The scratching remained. I waited for 1 minute and then checked through the peephole in the door. Nothing. I breathed deeply, attempting to calm down. Perhaps it was a limb striking the cabin due to the wind. I was attempting to roll over in order to roll into bed when there was an ear-splitting crash on the door that was so loud unexpectedly. I was frightened. Something, and perhaps somebody, was responsible for it. I rushed to Jason and Mark's room and shook Jason. "There's someone outside," I breathed urgently. Mark rolled over and groaned, but Jason came to life straight away. He took a flashlight and crept up to the door with me in stealth. We stood there. The quiet was stifling. Jason very gradually opened the door, severing the beam into the darkness. The beam pierced through the vacant porch, the trees whispering quietly into the darkness. Nothing. No noise. No track. We were too close, and then shut the door firm, invoking locks and chains. We would not disturb Sarah and Mark in the morning. There was no need to unnecessarily alarm them. The next day we went up, trying to make up for the unpleasantness of the previous night. The wood was beautiful but impossible, the large trees casting dark shadows that hid most of the sun. We did get it inconvenient enough to be lost, though a fairly well-marked trail was ahead of us. Halfway through our trek, we stumbled over something that gave us the shudders. A torn tent, the fabric torn and frayed. Torn clothes, a broken lantern, and what appeared to be claw marks on the tree trunks that circled us, scattered the ground. Sarah shivered. Maybe a bear ripped it apart, she surmised, although she doubted it herself. Jason stepped forward, staring at the ground. No animal tracks, though, just human prints. But they're odd, like someone walking with dragging feet. I shivered. Something was wrong with me. We went back, the weight of foreboding hanging over us. There was tension under that night in the cabin. We tried to laugh at it and keep things light, but we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I woke up at 2 a.m. again. No scratching this time. Whispering. Soft, scratchy whispering just outside the cabin. My stomach twisted in horror. I woke up Sarah and called her for quiet. We two were there with our jaws hanging open. The whispers grew louder, room by room. Jason and Mark had experienced it too since their door creaked open, and Jason walked out into the hall, his eyes wide with fright. He motioned for us to be silent. The whispers ceased at once, and frantic pounding on the windows. We all screamed. Jason had grasped the poker, Mark had grasped a kitchen knife, and Sarah was holding onto my arm for dear life. The thumping increased, thundering from window to window as if whatever or whoever was pounding around and trying to find every conceivable point of entry. And then, just as abruptly as it had started, it ceased. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. With the early morning time, we frantically packed up and took off. The trip home was forebodingly silent, all of us thoroughly dazed enough to converse. Jason phoned the cabin owner late one evening to inform him of what had happened. The owner listened in silence until Jason breathed. "You're not the first," he told him. "That's why there are so many locks on the doors." He continued to explain that strange things had been occurring in and around said location for decades. Hikers disappearing, campers waking up in the middle of the night to the whispering in their ear of some unknown entity, and phantom images seen on the periphery of the woods. We never did determine who or what was behind that cabin that evening, but I can assure you this much: I'll never be sleeping in a cabin in the woods again. Used not to believe in horror stories. Thought they were all bullsh people created to scare the crap out of each other. But let me tell you, when it catches up with you, when you're in some actual messed up shitty, that's when you realize horror ain't no movie cliche. It's real. And it's scary. It was one of those nights. One of those nights when the wind is howling in the crevices and the shadows are falling a fraction of a second longer than they should. I was home by myself, which wasn't actually that unusual. My parents had gone off for the weekend, so I was the only one in the house. It was wonderful at first. Pizza brought in, PlayStation lit up, lights low enough to set the mood. But there was something off. I attributed it to my first. Maybe I was reading too much into it. You know how your mind plays tricks on you when you're alone. But then the things began to pile up. The creak of the stairs upstairs while I was lounging in the living room. The creak of the back door when I knew darn well that I had closed it. The air was thick, heavy, like something had been lying there, breathing, waiting just recently. Shaked it, told myself I gotta have been tripping, and then the phone started ringing. One new message: no matter what, do not look outside. From unknown numbers. My stomach fell. My arms were outstretched on the screen as my heart was racing. First thing in my head, some terrible joke, one of my friends messing with me. But something about it, the way these words had been spoken, so cold and statement-like, it did not sound like a joking tone. I gulped a hard one when I chose to ignore the warning, and went ahead to peek through my front door anyway. I peeked through my peephole, and that is when the blood in my veins turned stiff. There was someone standing in front of my driveway entrance, stiffly stiff as a damn statue, black head to toe, hoodie up over the head, just standing, not walking around, not swaying at all, just standing and staring at my house. I stepped back, my pounding heart. Maybe they will go away. Maybe they were just a passerby. But the longer I stay there, the more I can sense that creeping feeling of being followed. Another buzz. Don't look outside again. Right. I lost it then. Whoever they were, they knew I had seen. Blind eyes crawled under my skin like they tunneled in every direction inside me. Double-locked the doors. I triple-checked them. Was holding a kitchen knife because, for goodness sake, I was not going to be one of those incoherently screaming horror movie victims. And the knocking. Not frantic, not pounding. Just slow, rhythmic. Knock, knock, knock. I gripped the knife in my hand, gasping for air. My whole instinct was to do nothing. But my idiot curiosity would not let me alone, as if I had never heard the sound. I slowly retreated back into the peephole, each step creaking out into the rest of the house. But when I looked, nothing. There was no one there. I breathed out, a trembling, frightened sort of relief washing over me. Maybe they'd left. Maybe it was all some sort of mad joke. Then the phone rang once more, the third time. "Don't move. He's watching you." My heart leaped in my chest. I didn't budge. Couldn't. But I knew. That sensation. The feeling that someone, was standing behind me, close enough to touch, close enough to feel my heart racing in my chest. I attempted to run. I attempted to spin and slash at the knife, but my body would not listen. I was immobile, held up by something greater than fear. And then the mood in the room changed, like something had swiveled. Not a lot, but enough so that I could feel the change. I ran. I waited. I thought. I just sprinted up the stairs and hurled myself into my room. My fingers fisted in a struggle to call 911, but my phone screen went black before I'd even gotten a chance to dial. Dead. And then, I heard it. A whisper. Outside my door, low and gravelly, scraping over quiet like claws over a lid. "I see you." I jammed my hand into the side of my face so that I couldn't let loose with the scream building in me. I was shaking, backsliding with wetness. The doorknob groaned, feeling hesitantly and cautiously around the lock. And silence. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't moving. A minute. At least, or so it felt. And then, steps. Heavy, thudding footfalls. From far, far away. I pushed against that door with my body until morning light. I did not sleep. I never even allowed myself to shut my eyes. And when morning was finally upon us, I crept downstairs, still dazed with heart. The house was silent. Too silent. And the front door, still shut. But on the floor, in the center of my living room, was my phone. Off. Rolled up neatly in a pile. And on the floor next to it, a piece of paper with a note. "Next time, listen." I never slept in at home again alone after that. Remaining up all night in a local diner at the side of the road was not the low I had ever reached. Sure, okay, every now and again it was the solitary activity, but the silence was of a benefit. This was until one night I worked in the diner and learned that I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. It was close to 2 a.m. on a cold autumn night. There weren't any other human beings to be found walking in the streets, and the neon outside the diner was a woeful ghost of light in the rolling fog rolling into town off the interstate highway. The refrigerator whirred its low, steady whine as the sole sound in the diner, and every now and again crackle as I had just added some French fries into it. I was alone that night, and the only customer was a truck driver at the end of the counter, getting a cup of coffee. He was one of my regulars, an old man named Dave, who trucked in for supper late after again on the road. I was cleaning off the counter when suddenly the doorbell rang. I looked up, hoping to spot a truck driver or a summer tourist in. But in walked a man who entered dressed in a filthy, frayed coat. Unnatural, mechanical. Machines. Moving with a purpose like machines. Face as pale as death. Eyes black holes tightening my stomach with fear. "Welcome," I said, smiling. "What do you want?" He didn't reply. He simply stood up and walked directly over to the booth, located in the rear of the diner, and sat down, gazing at the empty table in front of him. Dave fidgeted uncomfortably in his seat, cautiously looking at the man. "You okay, buddy?" he bellowed, his booming voice breaking the silence. The man didn't reply. I grabbed a menu and crept over to the man's booth. "Sir, meal or coffee?" His head snapped just barely, but never did his eyes find mine. He simply growled, "It's almost time." I iced. "Time for what?" He said nothing. He just sat there frozen. I looked over at Dave and he slowly shook his head, cringing. Something was amiss. I took a step back, meaning to leave the man in peace. I returned behind the counter, watching him as I gathered up cleaning equipment. But then, in the diner, there was another scene. Ripe air crawled up, and lights over the counter trembled. The whine of the refrigeration motor became a little louder. a little more quivery, as though the whole diner was attempting to hold its breath in anticipation. And then the door chime rang out once more. I turned around again, anticipating another customer, but this time no one stood there. I frowned. The door was shut. Outside, the fog had crept up to cover the glass like a ghostly hand. When I turned around again towards the booth once more, my own breath was caught in my throat. The man vanished. I did not see him stand, did not see him turn and walk away. He had just vanished. Dave slammed down his coffee, his face ashen. "What in the devil was that?" he growled. I was shocked. I approached the booth where the man had sat. My shaking hands reached out to put one on the table, expecting it to be frozen. What I found sent chills through me. On the table, scrawled across it in crooked writing, the message, "He is coming." I leaped back, pounding heart. My stomach was screaming at me to get up and flee, to shut the doors and away. But before I'd even made a start trying to do it, the lights went out. The lone diner, all, was dark. My chest labored with exertion as I struggled to pull my phone, its harsh white light out from under the couch, sending eerie shadows dancing across the walls. Only the faint echo of the wind screaming in the distance. Then, footsteps, slowing, dragging, from the kitchen. I switched on the light in that direction, my racing heart. "Who's there?" Nothing. Dave stood up, his hand in his jacket for something, a pocket knife, I presumed. He was as afraid as I was. And then, out of the corner of my eye, a man, a spindly, thin man on the periphery of the light. My own breathing ceased. It was the man, only when this did his face contort into a grotesque grin, wide beyond the bounds of man. His eyes were empty, pit-like. His arms were unnatural, too long, bending at non-human joints. He approached us. The ground creaked beneath his weight. Then, in front of us, all of us standing there frozen in fear, the lights flickered again, and he was gone. The only clue they left at the diner was the strange, faint laugh, distorted, warbled, echoing all over the diner. I didn't make it through the rest of my shift. I quit that night. Dave never came back either. 2 weeks later, I found a fellow coworker on the same night shift who had also noticed the same man before he disappeared into thin air. I have no idea what that thing was, but I do know one thing for certain: he wasn't human, and he's still out there in hiding, waiting, and sooner or later, he'll be back.